Welcome to Real Talk on Racism. My name is Renee Ellison. I am so excited about our guest today. We're going to be introducing you to an incredible woman. Her name is Rose Williams. She is the executive director of Harambee, which is in Camden County, New Jersey, and services domestic violence and sexual violence survivors. And Rose, I am so excited to have you here. Last week, we had an opportunity to connect.
Yes.
And I was so impressed with what you shared with me about all the incredible services that are provided at Harambee. Can you, first of all, tell me a little bit about Rose Williams, and then talk to me about how Harambee came to be. Because not only are you the executive director, you're also one of the founders.
That's correct. That's correct. Well, what I will say is that my beginnings in victim advocacy began back in the 80s. Actually in Philadelphia, I worked as a hotline volunteer back in the day for women in transition. And so fast forward to New Jersey and working with the New Jersey Coalition to End Domestic Violence, where I worked there for 13 years. And my role evolved, but it ended with my position as social justice administrator. And
what does a social justice administrator do?
So glad you asked. That position came about out of the need to help member programs develop more of a capacity to work with various marginalized communities. So I had an opportunity to visit all of the counties, all of the programs, and see, first of all, what they were doing, and then look at how the coalition could assist them to building other systems that would allow for these other groups of people to come in. So that work evolved over time and ended with our anti-racism work. Because we started with the disability community, we did quite a bit of work with them, and because again, no group was more underserved than the disability community. So that work, we worked with that around ADA and compliance and other issues that were evident in most of the programs. We work with the deaf and hard of hearing community, and we also then worked with people of color, which obviously included Black and African American people. And
so today's topic is about serving the underserved. And it sounds to me like you've been doing that for a very long time, decades upon decades. What do you find is the most challenging part of this work? And I know we could probably talk for 30 hours, but if you could just put it in a capsule, what's the most challenging part of the work, Rose?
If I would say in terms of an overall concept, working with underserved populations is the whole issue around underserved populations, to the most part, are in the margins as other survivors, victims of domestic violence and sexual assault have issues that are universal. They have some of those same issues, but you layer on top those stereotypes and those misconceptions about people who are different. And now, so it's that layer of shame and guilt that survivors feel, and now you add on, well, I have a disability, I'm a Black person, I'm a Latina. So all of those, all those intersectionalities collide, and when you're trying to reach them, now you have to, as a provider, have to find those ways that will connect to that specific group, because they're all similar but different.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So talk to me about Harambee and how it came to be.
Well, with all of that work and over the years with the coalition, One group stood out for me that's really not having specific services, and that group was Black and African American people. And so with a group of colleagues, we sat in my home one day talking about that issue, and which we have talked about many times, but then got to the point that, well, we have to do something. Yeah. And so the short story is that then we developed Harambee Social Services, which began as more of a prevention and outreach effort, because we had no funding. We had very little money, only money that we were able over the years to get from private funders, private donors. But with that money, we were able to go out and go to universities, schools, various church communities invited us out. Whoever asked us, we would go out and do workshops and presentations about prevention. And at one point, back in 2017, we actually got our first state funding, which was with Law and Public Safety, which was a VOCA grant, Victims of Crime Act funds. So we were able to get a 1-year discretionary grant to do training. And so that was fabulous to us because it gave us the opportunity to really do more comprehensive training, develop it, and then decide how to do it. But we did it statewide. We were able to do a total of 9 trainings, but we did 3 trainings in 3 different areas, which made the 9. But that was wonderful work.
So
and then,
I had an opportunity to take a peek at your website.
Okay.
And I love it.
Thank you.
I love your materials. Everything that you do is with quality and class.
We try.
You succeed.
Thank you.
And what I want to ask you about is the meaning of Harambe.
Oh.
Because when I read that, I thought, oh, this is it.
Yeah.
This is the connection that women, men in the African diaspora need.
Absolutely. Well, we chose the name Harambe because Harambe in Swahili means pulling together in unity. So as a community, we know that these crimes exist because sexual assault and domestic violence are crimes. We know they exist, but as a community, we can no longer say, well, it's a woman's problem. The women should handle it. Let's have a training for them, an intervention for them. They should keep themselves safe, or they should behave differently, and then the crime will go away. But we know that isn't true. So our premise is that the entire community is responsible, and the entire community needs to work together in order to eliminate those crimes. So
absolutely.
That's why Harambe.
And I love that idea of pulling together as a community. Yeah. Because that's where the healing begins, when you start to get the love and the compassion and the sensitivity from your peers, from your colleagues, from folks who you may not even know. I can't tell you because, of course, I'm the interim executive director of NJ CASA, the New Jersey Coalition Against Sexual Assault. And I can't tell you how many times I'll introduce myself and somebody will ask me what I do, and then they just start sharing their story of how they or someone else in their life have been sexually assaulted or the victim of domestic violence. So that community is so vital.
It is. The community is essential. Because it is never one solution to the healing. Healing is a process. And that's why, especially with sexual assault, we have people that come to us when we go out to these events, and we tell them what we do, and they'll say, oh, that happened to me years ago. Or it happened to my niece. But with that, they're still holding it. And we'll ask them sometimes, well, did you have a chance to talk to anybody about it? And they'll say, no, I never did. I never did. And we give them the card, we ask them to come. They come, they don't always come. But we know that that may take several more times. Maybe they'll continue to look at the card one day, a month later, 2 months later, 6 months later, exactly, and
20
say,
years later,
I want to come
Yeah.
in.
Mm-hmm.
So the point is that as the community begins to shift the paradigm around not blaming the victim, but embracing the victim and allowing that person to heal, giving them more of an opportunity to heal. Because the first piece, that first layer is that shame.
Yeah.
And it comes from everybody. It's so many people pointing the finger at you. And we know how people are treated within the judicial system around sexual assault. It's a very, very complicated process for them.
So there's so many different things that I want to talk about here. The first is the unfolding of the trauma. And can you talk just a little bit about how trauma impacts survivors of sexual assault and domestic violence, and how that trauma, like you said, could be 2 days, could be 2 years, it could be 20 years. But just that piece and how that impacts the survivor.
Well, trauma in of itself, a trauma from almost any situation, a car accident, some other situation that would be just so impactful, is something that has several layers. And for someone who has had multiple traumas, that may be different than someone who has had the one trauma. And then even there, each person is going to handle it differently.
Right.
So you have that whole piece of like a grieving almost, the loss of who they were, who they thought they were, or who they thought they would be, is attacked from that trauma. Because, well, if that happened to me, well, then I can't be this, or I can't do this. And they can go into such an incredible internal process with trying to make some sense of this and still live their regular life. And so I think that is another thing that, as a community, it's so important for us to understand that when we see victims not disclosing right away. Well, they said, well, that happened last week. You never said anything. Well, you came to work. I didn't think you looked any. Well, maybe I didn't, because that was what I needed to do to just survive that day. So I'm going to do what I need to do to feel as safe as I can feel right now, in the moment.
Right.
And so.
And normal.
And normal. So maybe I won't tell anybody. Might not tell anybody. Maybe I have one friend that I can trust that won't judge me. I may tell that one person, but I'm not, maybe I did the rape kit, maybe I didn't. It's all of these other factors that come in. But when you, again, in terms of the legal side of it, later comes back to, again, re-victimize the victim.
Right.
But, yeah.
So that leads me to the other avenue that I wanted to travel down, which is the whole idea of not reporting.
Yeah.
And of course, Harambee focuses primarily on men and women who are in the African diaspora. That relationship between folks of color and law enforcement, even prior to George Floyd, has been very strained and problematic. Can you talk to me a little bit about how one might experience something so traumatic as a sexual assault and decide not to report, and how often that happens?
I can give you as many numbers around the sexual assault as I can on the DV side.
Okay.
But I know that for the DV side, that is very common in terms of, and it is common on the sexual assault. Just can't give the statistics, but the concept of, or the idea of a black woman reporting a black man so that he is now incarcerated is an extremely difficult struggle. That is difficult because very often, in our minds, we have the idea of who would commit rape or who would commit domestic violence, and we think, oh, it's a thug, it's a lowlife, it's somebody that's out of work and not caring about himself. But no, it's very often just a regular guy who goes to work every day, who, you probably would like on any given day that you met him. But that guy could still possibly be someone who harms. And so now when you are victimized, either a sexual assault or a DV, then you have to struggle with, but he's never been in trouble. I don't want to get him in trouble. We begin to think more about their needs than we do about our own needs. Right. And that is, I think that is the piece that's unique for black people that is not for others. Because we are the only ones that have that unique history. Mm-hmm. And that, as you said, that strained relationship with law enforcement and the judicial systems, all which are disproportionately high for black men.
Right.
And some who have been convicted wrongfully. So as a black woman who is a victim of either of those crimes, this is the other layer, the family that you have to face, the community that you have to face, that will look at you as, well, it's your fault that he is now entangled with the law.
Right.
We're
victim blaming.
It's that whole victim blaming.
Rose, this is such a great conversation. I'm going to pause for the cause just for a moment, and we'll be right back with more. When we come back with Rose Williams, we're going to be talking a little bit more in depth about the services and the programs offered at Harambee. Mm-hmm. We'll be right back with more. We are back with Real Talk on Racism, and Rose Williams is here from Harambee, the executive director, one of the founders. And I am so enthralled with the services that you provide mm-hmm. and the programs that you have established that really outreach to the community mm-hmm. at large. Can you share with me a little bit about some of the things that sure. You provide to the community and how you serve?
Yeah. Well, one of the things, one of the primary things that we have been able to do is to, for our counseling services, we recognize that people respond to just the concept of counseling differently. And I think that happens a lot in the black community. So we wanted our therapeutic interventions to have a range of modalities and different choices. So we are working with two wonderful therapists, well, actually two organizations, because one actually has 10 therapists at our disposal, and they have a lot of experience around sexual assault and working with even sexual assault victims, human trafficking victims. And so with that, they're going to be bringing something called eye movement desensitization therapy, which in fact is, from what I understand, very, very, very successful with working on healing with sexual assault victims. I won't go into it more than that because I don't know enough about it, but what I do understand that since it is more of a kinetic kind of a therapy versus a, yes, rather than cognitive behavioral therapy, which is more of what we have been doing with our domestic violence survivors, we felt like, okay, let's offer this different thing.
You know what I'm feeling I need to do right here? Rose, can you make a distinction between domestic violence and sexual assault and how they intersect, how they overlap? Just talk to us a little bit for the average viewer who might not work in this space or might not be familiar. How is it different?
Well, okay. Well, first of all, both are crimes, but there are some differences and some similarities. Domestic violence is a pattern of behaviors which may be either physical, they could be emotional, they could be financial, but they all are behaviors by someone who harms against another victim to gain power and control over them.
So it's rooted in oppression.
It is totally rooted in oppression because, again, it's that power dynamic. So many people see domestic violence as something that is purely physical, but in fact, it is has these other aspects as well.
And when you say emotional, you mean like putting somebody down, being condescending,
all of the
calling
above.
Names,
Yes,
that sort of thing.
Yes.
And when you say financial
could be, I've had a survivor who was working every day full-time at a very nice job, but they essentially had no money. They had to turn their money over. They had they had things in their name but they had no control in terms of credit cards. They had no control over who got paid, when it got paid, how it got paid, but they worked every day. So trying to plan an escape to get out was very, very difficult. I likened it to an escape because essentially you are a prisoner.
Right.
And so when someone is controlling you to that length, it's where are you going? When are you coming back? They will monitor you. They will check your odometer on your car. They will feel the hood of the car to see if it's warm. Has it been out? They will have neighbors checking on you. They can tell. They have surveillance in the house. Saying it's for security, but in fact they're the one that's monitoring it.
So that's domestic.
So that's domestic.
Right.
So the sexual assault, often we see the picture of someone grabs you in the alley and then there's an attack and some unknown assailant, but very often it's not the case.
It does happen on occasion, but it's not.
That is not the largest number. The largest number of those attacks happen with a person that is known to the victim. It is very often, again, a power dynamic. Certainly, this is not. Many people think that sexual assault is about attraction to someone and a sexual act. It's really a power and control act. It's really about having dominance over someone and taking their will from them. It really has very little to do with sex. It just is a sex act. But I think the biggest thing is that it typically is someone that is known to you who will, and again, a rape, there's a continuum. There's a sexual assault that could be a verbal assault on someone where you're working and someone is continually making unwanted advances, calling you names that are unacceptable, that kind of thing. That's sort of sexual harassment, but never gets physical. But then there's the touch, wherever. If it's an unwanted touch, it's a sexual act.
Exactly.
So it's a range.
Thank you for breaking that down.
Yeah.
Because I think it's important, and because they intersect.
They do. They do.
It can be very complicated sometimes, especially in a domestic violence situation, to report out and all that. So
Yeah.
I can hear the challenges in that. So as we continue to talk a little bit more about Harambee and the programs, would you share with me how you're able to help these folks who are also survivors of both, either domestic violence, sexual assault, or both, to continue to heal and to thrive?
Well, I started to say about the counseling, so that's a big part of our work, especially with the sexual assault survivors, is the healing, is just so important. So we looked at different things. So aside from the counseling, there's group. We also have, just actually last night, we had our first session of our book club. So the book club will talk about sexual assault, either a fiction or nonfiction. Right now we're doing a fiction, but it's an anthology of various stories on women who have been raped. And but we will use that as a way to help people hear stories, other people's stories, and that can be a healing for them as we process how those stories go about.
So nice.
So that'll be great.
How does one get involved with the book club?
The book club, you should contact Sharon Travis and at Harambee Social Services. So it would be Travis.
Is this the right number?
S. Yes. If you call that number, you can reach her. Or if you want to send her an email, it would be Travis S. at HarambeeSocialServices.org.
Okay.
And you can get connected to the book club.
So I'm going to give you the number, 609-225-6936. 609-225-6936.
Wonderful.
That's how, if you wanted to decide to become a part of the book
Yes.
club, that would be fun.
Just contact Sharon, and then we had our first night last week, but it will be, I believe it is 8 Mondays.
8 Mondays, okay.
Coming up, and that is virtual. So
Wonderful.
again, people have an opportunity to attend. We will have the yoga class. We've already started the yoga class, which is again trying to body, mind, and spirit. Our healing has to come in those ways.
Tamu Lane.
Tamu Lane. She wonderful.
She really is.
Tamu's been with us from the beginning. Tamu has been a part of our advisory board back in the beginning, back in 2013 when we started. So, but she's a phenomenal therapist as well as trainer, and she does our yoga class, which is going to be meeting on a regular basis as well.
Which I can imagine, knowing Tamu, is far beyond the average yoga class.
Absolutely, absolutely.
Can you share a little bit about what makes it different and unique?
Yeah, and the things of how we make these therapeutic interventions is that we do add that therapeutic aspect of mindfulness or meditation in the beginning that we offer. We have that at the beginning, at the end of the session, and then as Tamu is conducting the various exercises, there's an opportunity to tap into some of those things that one might be feeling, and so I think it's a very special moment to be a part of her yoga class. So that's going on as well. So we have the support group, the yoga class, the book club, and of course one-on-one counseling with either of the therapists. Heart to Heart is the organization that we're working with, as well as Tamu.
So what's on the horizon for Harambee?
What's on the horizon? That's a great question. Well, one of the things, now that that the restrictions are lifting. We'd like to be out and about in the community much more, and getting back to our webinars, either in person or more of the virtual. But we have some of that already on the calendar. Not exact dates, but we will be out doing that much more.
Wonderful.
So we want to share with people that we not only do the prevention work, but that we are doing these other wonderful services, and so we're looking forward to that.
We are so proud of you for everything that you've accomplished, and when I say we, I speak for women of color who are survivors, who look at the services that you provide and think, gosh, this is exactly what I need as a woman of color, going through a challenge, going through the intricacies of healing and navigating that whole process. We are so proud of you for stepping up and stepping out and making Harambe possible for all of us.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you,
Rose. And thank you so much. Did you have something else you
I
wanted to say?
actually just thought of one other thing, and they'll say, "What? You didn't say?"
Please,
we have the financial literacy classes.
Financial literacy.
Yeah,
Wonderful.
we are going to be starting the financial literacy class. I believe it starts the 27th of the month. That will be a hybrid of October, and that's a wonderful program in that, as we mentioned, financial abuse is one of the issues for many survivors. So we will be having a wonderful organization that will be doing the training. They're going to use a combination of the Allstate moving forward curriculum and their own curriculum. So we will be doing that for 6 weeks. After the 6 weeks, they have an opportunity to start their own bank account with a $100 match. So I think that's really important to get out there, and that again, it sort of gives them that head start. So we're looking forward to that. And that again, if you call our number, you can find out about how to sign up for that as well.
Rose, thank you so much for joining.
Thank you for inviting.
And thank you so much, all of you, for being a part of this incredible show. We are so excited about the work that we're going to be doing moving forward and all the incredible guests in our future. So have a wonderful day, and we'll see you next time.